You will be shocked by this story when you find out how it really happened. My name's Mike, and I work as a firefighter in a small but lively town in Colorado. Every day brought its own set of challenges, but I liked it that way. There was something uniquely satisfying about knowing that my work mattered, that I could make a tangible difference in someone's worst moment. I enjoyed the camaraderie at the firehouse, the adrenaline of the calls, and the sense of purpose my job gave me. It wasn't just a career. It was a second family and a calling. My wife, Erin, was the academic in the family. She worked at the local university, teaching psychology, which always seemed fitting for someone as sharp and insightful as her. Erin loved her job. She'd come home and talk about her students, her colleagues, and the challenges of teaching. Her stories were usually animated, her face lighting up as she described a breakthrough with a struggling student or a particularly engaging class discussion. I didn't always understand the academic world she lived in, but I respected it. She'd worked hard to build a reputation at the university, and her students seemed to either love her or fear her, sometimes both. We'd been married for 8 years. We didn't have kids, although we talked about it from time to time. Most weekends we went hiking, had game nights with friends, or visited the brewery downtown. It wasn't flashy, but it was our life, and I thought it was good. Erin occasionally mentioned her students in passing, usually funny or frustrating stories about class discussions or missed assignments. She didn't bring up specific names often, but one student had come up a few times recently, Justin. She'd said one night, as we were cleaning up dinner, that he was smart but lazy. She explained how he thought he could coast through the semester without putting in real effort. She had to fail him on his last paper, and now, according to her, he was sulking about it. I remember shrugging and saying something about how kids these days needed to learn accountability. Erin nodded, but I could tell the situation had gotten under her skin more than she let on. A few days later, she mentioned him again. She told me that Justin had shown up during her office hours, trying to argue about his grade. According to her, it had been tense. I asked her how it had been tense. She hesitated before answering. She said he was just persistent, the type who couldn't accept being wrong. She assured me she'd handle it. I didn't think much of it. Erin could handle herself. She wasn't one to back down from a fight, especially when it came to her work. I had no idea that student, Justin, was going to interfere in my life. One Saturday, I had a rare day off. Erin was busy at the university for some event. I spent the morning catching up on yard work, then headed to the hardware store to grab supplies for a project I'd been putting off. The day was one of those perfect autumn moments, the kind where the crisp air fills your lungs with a sense of energy, and the golden sunlight makes everything seem just a little brighter. It felt good to step away from the firehouse for a while and enjoy the simple pleasures of home life. And then an SMS came to my phone, a text message. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about ignoring it, but something about it caught my attention. Maybe it was the subject line, cold and cryptic. You need to see this. I frowned, tapping the message open. Attached to the text was a video file. No explanation, no introduction, just a short clip. My first instinct was suspicion. Spam, I thought. Or maybe a scam. But curiosity won out. Against my better judgment, I downloaded the video. An image flashed on the screen. It was dark and shaky at first, the camera shifting awkwardly like the person holding it had been in a hurry. But then the scene sharpened, and my heart froze. It was an office, a small, cluttered space with books stacked high on shelves and papers scattered across a desk. It didn't take long for me to recognize it. I'd been there before, briefly, during one of Erin's faculty events. It was her office. My breath caught in my throat as I tried to understand what I was seeing. And then the camera turned, showing 2 figures in the frame. One of them was my wife. Erin's face was instantly recognizable, even with the low lighting. Her hair was a bit tousled, and she had that relaxed, almost careless posture that made it obvious she was comfortable, too comfortable, where she was. And then there was him, Travis, the football coach. I'd seen him around at Erin's work, always commanding attention with that natural confidence of his, but we'd never really exchanged more than a brief nod. But nothing prepared me for what came next in the video. My chest tightened as I watched them, my mind struggling to process what was unfolding. Their movements were fluid, practiced, like they'd done this before. like they'd been here countless times. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness. They knew exactly what they were doing. The muffled sound didn't matter. The images were everything. I could see how she responded to him, how he touched her, the way she moved against him. It wasn't just a mistake or a one-off moment. It was something real, something physical, something that left no room for confusion, no space to hide behind. I didn't need to hear it to know what happened. It was all right there in front of me. As the camera angle shifted, I noticed something else, a faint reflection in the glass door of a cabinet behind them. A shadowy figure was holding up a phone, quietly recording from just outside the office. This wasn't some accidental discovery or a random leak. Someone had been there, someone who had seen everything and made the deliberate choice to film it. My thoughts immediately turned to Justin. Erin had mentioned him recently, a student who'd been giving her a hard time after a conflict over his grades. She'd said he was persistent, stubborn, angry. I didn't know much about him, but now I knew enough. The video ended abruptly, leaving me staring at a blank screen. My hands trembled as I set the phone down on the table. 1,000 questions swirled in my head, each one more agonizing than the last. How long had this been going on? Had she ever planned on telling me? And what kind of person would record this and send it to me? The house, which had felt warm and familiar when I walked in, now felt alien and cold. I sat there in silence, staring at the screen, as the weight of what I'd just seen settled in. My mind replayed the images over and over, a cruel loop I couldn't shut off. The life Erin and I had built together, the laughter, the quiet mornings, the small moments of intimacy, felt like a cruel joke now. Everything I thought I knew about my wife, my marriage, my life, it all felt like it had been shattered in an instant. But as the shock began to give way to anger, one thought rose above the chaos. Whoever had sent this video didn't just want me to know. They wanted me to act. A dark idea began to form in my mind. Confronting her wouldn't be enough. Not yet. She had betrayed me, shattered everything we'd built together, and I couldn't just let her walk away with excuses and apologies. No, this called for something different. I wanted revenge. And the person who sent me this video gave me the perfect weapon to do so. I spent the next few days planning every detail. I didn't want to confront her in private. No, that would give her the chance to explain, to make excuses, to play the victim. She didn't deserve that. She didn't deserve the privacy of a conversation or the safety of my forgiveness. She needed to face the consequences of what she'd done, and I was going to make sure the whole world knew. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. The university had a faculty event scheduled, an important one, where all the professors, administrators, and the dean would be present. A formal gathering, full of pomp and circumstance, but no students. The perfect setting. I had been invited, as Erin's husband, though I wasn't exactly thrilled about attending. But now, the invitation felt like the universe had handed me the perfect stage. The night before the event, I went over the plan in my head 100 times. I wasn't going to just walk up and announce it. No, I needed to create intrigue. I needed everyone to hear my words, to see the betrayal with their own eyes. I couldn't let this slip by unnoticed. This wasn't just about getting back at Erin. It was about taking off her mask and showing her as she really is. I made sure the video was loaded on my phone, ready to go. The video wasn't long, but every second of it would carry the weight of the world. It would be enough. I had already talked to a few people at the event, those I trusted, who would be able to discreetly help me get attention when the time was right. The event itself was everything I expected, formal, stiff, and full of small talk. Erin was busy, talking to her colleagues, her usual confident, radiant self. But I could see through it now. I saw the smile that was meant to mask the guilt, the way she kept glancing around nervously, as though she knew something was coming. I almost felt bad for her, but that passed quickly. She didn't deserve my pity. And then I noticed that Erin was gone. She wasn't at the snack table, and she wasn't in the crowd either. I scanned the room and realized that Travis wasn't there either. I knew exactly where they were. Without drawing attention to myself, I quietly slipped out of the hall. The corridors of the university building were quiet, the faint hum of the event still audible in the distance. I moved with purpose, my footsteps steady despite the storm raging inside me. As I approached Erin's office, I slowed down, making sure I didn't make any noise. The door was closed. My heart was pounding in my chest, every beat louder than the last. And then I heard it. The hushed tones of voices, warm and close, merged with the rhythmic sounds of bodies moving, rapid breathing, and a quiet intensity that left no doubt about the closeness. I stood there for a moment, frozen. Part of me wanted to barge in, to confront them right there, to put an end to this disgusting charade. But I didn't. Instead, I turned and walked away, my steps quieter than ever. The walk back to the event felt endless. Every step I took felt heavier, the weight of what I'd just heard pressing down on me. My mind was a storm of anger, humiliation, and heartbreak, but I forced myself to keep it together. When I noticed that Travis and Erin were back, sliding back into the crowd as if nothing had happened, I knew that this lie would not last. I waited until after the speeches had ended, when the crowd was gathered, comfortable, and distracted by drinks and hors d'oeuvres. It was then that I saw my chance. I stood up from the corner where I'd been watching, drawing the eyes of a few curious faculty members. I smiled, a calm smile, the kind you give when you're about to do something you know is going to rock the world. Erin was standing by the dean, chatting, and she didn't notice me approach. I cleared my throat loudly, getting the attention of the room. The hum of conversation died down. I stepped forward, clearing my throat to gather everyone's attention. With my voice steady but firm enough to carry across the room, I introduced myself as Mike, Erin's husband. I explained that I had something important to share, something I believed needed to be said openly. There was a pause, a few glances exchanged, and Erin turned toward me, her face going pale as she recognized the seriousness in my tone. The dean looked confused, unsure of what was happening. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, holding it up for everyone to see. I made it clear that before continuing, it was only fair for everyone to see what I was referring to. With a deliberate tap on the screen, I played a video that had been sent to me, letting it speak for itself. The screen flickered, and the image of Erin in her office with Travis appeared on the large projector screen behind me. I could hear the collective gasp in the room as the scene played out. Erin's face was on the screen, a look of surprise and confusion spreading across her features as she recognized what was happening. But it was too late. The video didn't lie. The room was filled with uncomfortable murmurs, whispers. The dean's face reddened, and the faculty members around me exchanged shocked looks. Erin was rooted to the spot, unable to move, her eyes locked on the screen as she watched her own betrayal unfold before her. I kept my eyes on her, my anger still simmering under the surface. I didn't need to shout, to argue, to make a scene. The video had done the work for me. I had taken away her power to control the narrative. This was her moment of reckoning. The room had gone silent. Everyone was watching, some with sympathy, some with judgment, but all were aware of what had just been revealed. Erin was no longer the respected professor. She wasn't the woman I had once loved. She was just another person caught in the web of their own lies. The wall she had built around herself crumbled in front of her colleagues, her peers, and me. As the video ended, I let the silence stretch on for a moment. I didn't need to say anything else. Erin was shaking now, her face flushed with humiliation, her eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape, but finding none. I acknowledged the room's likely confusion, keeping my tone calm despite the anger simmering beneath. I made it clear that any questions they had should be directed to Erin, emphasizing that she was the one with the answers about everything that had been happening. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving the shattered pieces of her life behind me. I didn't care how she explained herself to the people she had worked with for so long. The truth was out, and that was all that mattered. As I walked out of the room, the cold evening air hit me like a slap. My chest felt tight, my thoughts spiraling, but I forced myself to keep moving. I didn't turn back, not even as I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Erin's voice broke through the whirlwind of emotions that clouded my mind. Her tone was desperate and pleading as she called out to me, begging me to stop. I stopped, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see her face one last time. I turned slowly, meeting her tear-streaked eyes. She looked disheveled, like someone who had just realized their worst nightmare wasn't a dream. I turned back to face her, my voice coming out colder than I anticipated as I asked what she wanted. She stammered, her voice cracking as she pleaded with me to let her explain. Her words were disjointed, insisting that it wasn't what I thought. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Not what I think. Erin, I saw it. Everyone did. Don't insult me by pretending it's anything else. Her lips trembled, and I saw her hesitate, as if she was about to reach out to me, her hand inching toward my arm. But I couldn't let her. I stepped back, the space between us suddenly feeling like an ocean. My words came out sharper than I intended. I told her that she had already done enough, that there was nothing left to say. I made it clear that this wasn't about fixing what we had, because that was already broken. No, this was about saving her, saving whatever dignity she still had left. Her face crumpled, and she began to sob. But I didn't feel pity, not anymore. She had turned my life into a spectacle, and I wasn't about to let her crocodile tears change that. I spoke quietly, my words cutting through her sobs. I told her that she had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. There was no going back, no undoing the mess she had created. I watched her struggle to find the right words, but I wasn't interested in hearing any more excuses. The damage was done, and all I could do now was walk away. The ride home was silent, the quiet punctuated only by the occasional buzz of my phone. Erin, again. Message after message, apologies, explanations, please. I ignored them all. I couldn't bring myself to delete her number yet, but I also couldn't stomach hearing her voice or reading her excuses. That night, sleep didn't come. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the events over and over. The looks on their faces, the betrayal etched into every second of that video. The weight of what I'd done settled heavily on me. Had I gone too far? The question gnawed at me, even as I told myself Erin deserved it. But revenge, I realized, was a hollow victory. I didn't feel lighter. I didn't feel vindicated. If anything, the weight of it all pressed harder against my chest. Do you think the husband's actions were right? And is it possible to forgive your wife and give her another chance?